The cafeteria was full. Every table was noisy. Students were laughing, shouting, tapping their shoes on the floor and waving their hands while they talked. It was just another busy lunch break for everyone except for her. She walked in slowly, holding her food tray with both hands. Her fingers were shaking a little, and her eyes were moving from one table to the next. She looked like she was searching for something. Or maybe someone? But she found nothing. Every table was packed. Chairs were pulled close. Bags were placed on empty seats. There was not even a single free space left. She stopped near the center of the cafeteria. For a moment, she did not move. She just stood there with her tray, not knowing what to do. Her face was calm, but her eyes showed a little fear, the fear of sitting alone, the fear of being watched, the fear of being ignored again. Students noticed her, but no one really noticed her. Some glanced at her for a second, then went back to their conversations. Some looked away quickly, pretending they did not see her, and some did not care at all. Everyone was busy with their own world. She took a slow breath and looked at her tray. The food was getting cold, but she still didn't move. She did not want to walk around and look desperate for a seat. She did not want to stand and look lonely, but she had no other choice. She lifted her head again and scanned the room once more, left to right, front to back. Still nothing far in the corner. A boy sat alone. His back was slightly bent forward as he ate quietly. He was not talking to anyone. He was not laughing or shouting like others. He seemed like the calmest person in the whole room. But he was not alone because he wanted to be. He was alone because he was tired of the noise. When he looked up for a moment, his eyes caught her. She did not see him, but he saw everything in 1 second. Her shaking hands, her slow breathing, her lonely eyes, her silent struggle, her simple wish to just find a place to sit. Something inside him changed when he saw her. Maybe it was empathy. Maybe it was kindness. Maybe it was something he could not explain. He watched her for a few more seconds, and then he made a decision. He stood up. The moment he stood up, 2 boys at the next table noticed him. "Hey, where are you going?" one of them asked, but the boy did not answer. He simply walked to the messy empty table in front of him. It was full of plates, bottles, and crumbs. Someone had used it and left without cleaning. No one wanted to sit there except him. He pulled the plates to one side. He moved the empty cups. He wiped the crumbs with a napkin. He pushed the chairs into proper position. In just a few seconds, the table looked clean and ready. Some students stared at him with confused faces. Why is he cleaning a table? Is someone coming? Who is he waiting for? But he did not look at anyone. After cleaning the table, he turned toward her. She was still standing in the same place, still lost in her thoughts, still holding her food tray tightly. He took a small step toward her. Every sound around him felt softer. Every movement in the cafeteria felt slower. It was like time paused for a moment only for him. He walked across the cafeteria, quietly, calmly. When he reached her, she looked up, surprised. She had not expected anyone to come to her. He pointed toward the clean table and said in a soft voice, "You can sit there if you want." She blinked. She did not know what to say. No one had ever cleared a table for her before. No one had even noticed her struggle before. And now, a stranger had done something she'd never expected. Why? Who was he? Why did he help her? The answers were hidden in their past, a past she didn't know yet, and a past he tried to forget. But this moment was the beginning of something. Something important. Something unexpected. Something that would change both their lives. The cafeteria moment stayed in her mind long after she sat down. Even when she finally placed her tray on the clean table, her hands were still a little shaky. She kept wondering why someone would do that for her, especially someone she had never spoken to before. But to truly understand her silence, her fear, her loneliness, the story must step back a little to the days before she entered the school. Her name was Ara, a quiet girl, soft-spoken, and always thinking more than she said. She had moved to the city only 3 weeks ago. Her father had changed his job. Her mother had hoped for a fresh start. And Ara had no choice but to adjust to a new school, a new neighborhood, and a new life she never asked for. Back in her old town, she was not popular, but she was not invisible either. She had two friends, one favorite bench in the park, and a small life that felt safe. There, she did not have to explain herself. Everyone already knew her. But after the move, everything changed. On her first day at the new school, she felt like a small leaf blown into a big storm. Students walked in groups. They laughed loudly in the hallways. They greeted each other like family. But she walked alone, listening to the echo of her own footsteps. She wanted to talk to people. She wanted to smile. She wanted to belong. But her past held her back, a past she carried quietly. Before moving, she had faced something she didn't talk about often. Her old classmates weren't cruel, but they were careless. Sometimes they laughed at her soft voice. Sometimes they teased her for being slow to answer. Sometimes they ignored her without meaning to. These small things slowly became heavy for her, so when she arrived at the new school, she was scared to repeat the same pattern. She feared saying something wrong. She feared being judged. She feared being laughed at again. That fear was the reason she walked through the hallways. With her head down, it was the reason she sat in the back seat in every class. It was the reason the cafeteria felt like a battlefield. She didn't know how to cross. Every day during lunch, she searched for a quiet corner. Sometimes she sat under the big tree behind the building. Sometimes she sat near the staircase. Sometimes she sat on a bench far from the crowd. She didn't want to seem lonely. She just didn't want to bother anyone. But loneliness has a strange way of growing. Even when we pretend it doesn't hurt each day, she hoped someone would look at her and say, "Hey, want to sit with us?" But no one did. Everyone was polite, but they were already in their own groups. They had their jokes, their memories, their comfort. A new girl with a quiet voice didn't fit in easily. Still, Era tried to stay positive. She kept telling herself, "It's only the first week. It will get better." But it never really did. The days felt the same. Quiet, slow, heavy, and then came the morning before the cafeteria moment. Era had woken up late, because she couldn't sleep the night before. Her mind was full of thoughts, school, loneliness, the fear of repeating her old life again. She skipped breakfast because she was in a rush. She reached school just as the bell rang. Her stomach growled through the first class, but she stayed silent. By the time lunchtime arrived, she was tired, hungry, and mentally exhausted. She hoped she would find an empty corner like always. But that day, the cafeteria was unusually crowded. A sports event had ended and everyone had come inside at the same time. That's why she stood frozen in the center of the room. That's why her hands shook while holding the tray. That's why she felt so helpless. But while everyone else looked through her, one person saw her, the boy who had quietly watched her for days without saying a word. The boy who had noticed her loneliness before she noticed him. The boy who stood up and cleaned a table just for her. She didn't know him. She didn't even know his name. But for the first time in many days, someone had shown her kindness, and that small act was about to change everything. While Era tried to understand the boy's sudden act of kindness, the boy himself was dealing with memories he rarely talked about. His name was Rian, a quiet thinker, someone who watched the world more than he spoke to it. To most students, Rian was just a normal boy. He came to school on time, sat in the last row, completed his work, and left when the bell rang. He did not create problems, he did not join groups, and he did not try to be popular. But people only saw the surface. They did not know the part of him he hid carefully. Rian had once been very different. Back in middle school, he used to talk a lot. He used to laugh loudly. He used to sit with big groups. He wasn't the center of attention, but he was always surrounded by people. But when he entered high school, everything changed slowly at first. Then suddenly, the biggest change began with his best friend, Zion. Zion was like a brother to him. They did everything together, projects, sports, even weekend hangouts. But when they entered high school, Zion found a new group. A louder, more confident, more cool group. Rian tried to adjust. He tried to join their conversations, but the group didn't accept him easily. They would joke about his simple clothes, tease him about his quiet nature, and sometimes ignore him completely when he spoke. At first, Rian laughed it off. He thought they were just joking, just trying to be funny. But soon, it became clear they were not joking, they simply did not respect him. One day, during lunch in the old school, Rian went to sit with them. But the group suddenly said the seat was reserved, looked at Zion, hoping he would say something. But Zion stayed silent. He didn't even look up. That was the moment something inside Rian broke quietly, silently but deeply. After that day, he began sitting alone. Sometimes he told himself he preferred it. Sometimes he tried to believe it did not hurt, but deep down, it did. Loneliness does not always come from being alone. Sometimes it comes from being surrounded by the wrong people. Rian learned that lesson too early. Slowly, he changed. He stopped trying to make friends. He stopped trying to join groups. He stopped trying to be understood. He became calm on the outside and cautious on the inside. By the time he reached this school, he had decided one thing clearly. I will not expect anything from anyone. And for a long time, he lived that way. But there was something still alive in him, something soft, something warm, something he never allowed anyone to see. It showed up rarely, only when he saw someone in pain or someone struggling alone. And that is exactly why he had noticed. Era, the first time he saw her was 2 weeks ago. She had been sitting under the tree behind the school with her lunchbox. She looked peaceful, but at the same time, lonely. Rian felt a familiar feeling rising in him, the same feeling he felt when he used to sit alone. After that, he unknowingly started noticing her. How she walked quietly, how she kept her head low, how she ate alone every day, how she avoided crowds. It wasn't curiosity. It wasn't attraction. It was recognition. He saw in her the same silence he had once carried, the same fear, the same loneliness. He wanted to help her, but he wasn't sure how. He didn't want to make her uncomfortable. He didn't want to look strange. So he waited, hoping the right moment would come, and it came. That day, in the cafeteria, when he saw her standing with her food tray, helpless and unsure, something inside him moved, the same old pain, the same old memory, the same old empathy. He remembered how it felt to be ignored. He remembered how it felt to have no place to sit. He remembered how it felt when people pretended not to see him. So he stood up, not to impress her, not to show off, but because he knew the weight of loneliness, and he didn't want her to carry it alone. That one act, clearing a table for her, was simple, but for Rian, it was more than kindness. It was healing a part of himself he thought was long lost, and for Era, it was the beginning of something she never expected. Era sat at the clean table with slow, unsure movements. She placed her tray down gently, almost like she was afraid the sound would disturb someone. Rian walked back to his seat, but he did not sit immediately. For a moment, he stood behind his chair and looked at her from a distance, not staring, not judging, just checking if she felt comfortable. Era felt his presence, even without looking up. Something in the air felt different, lighter, safer. She took a small breath and finally sat properly. Her heart was still beating faster than normal. She didn't know why a stranger's kindness affected her so much, but it did. After a few seconds, Rian quietly sat down at his table across from hers. They were not too close, not too far, just enough for silence to feel gentle instead of heavy. Era slowly lifted her fork, but she couldn't take the first bite. Her mind was full of questions. Why did he help me? Does he know me? What if he thinks I'm weird? Should I say thank you? She looked up for a second, and their eyes met, just for a moment. She quickly looked down again, embarrassed. But Rian didn't look away. His face didn't show confusion or awkwardness. Instead, he gave a small, soft smile. A smile that said, "It's okay. You don't have to be scared." Something warm spread through her chest. It wasn't love. It wasn't attraction. It was simply relief. For the first time since she came to this school, someone was not ignoring her. Minutes passed quietly. The cafeteria noise continued around them. Chairs moving, people laughing, plates clattering, but their small corner felt strangely calm. Finally, Era gathered courage. She stood up slowly and walked toward him. Rian looked up, surprised but calm. She stopped next to his table, holding her hands together nervously. "Thank you," she said in a soft voice. Her voice was quiet, but it carried honesty. Rian nodded once. "It's okay," Era hesitated. She didn't know what else to say. She didn't want to disturb him, but she also didn't want to walk away too fast. Her feet felt stuck between fear and comfort. Rian noticed her confusion. "You can sit here, if you want," he said, pointing to the empty chair across from him. Era froze. "Are you sure?" He nodded again, calmly. She carefully sat down, leaving a respectful distance. She did not know how to act. Should she talk? Should she stay quiet? Should she smile? She had forgotten how to sit with someone without feeling stressed. Rian broke the silence first. "You are new here, right?" She nodded. "Yes, 3 weeks. How's it going?" Era looked at her hands and said honestly, "It's a little hard." Rian didn't ask why. He didn't push her to explain. His simple silence told her he understood. And that understanding felt more comforting than any long conversation. "Give it time," he said softly. "It gets better." Era met his eyes for the first time properly. His voice carried a strange calmness, like he wasn't just giving advice. He was speaking from experience. Era took a small breath. "Do you always sit alone?" Rian looked at his tray for a second, thinking, "Most days." "Why?" she asked before realizing it might be too personal. But Rian didn't get uncomfortable. He simply said, "Sometimes. Alone is easier." Era understood more than she expected. She didn't push the conversation further. Instead, she simply nodded. Their silence returned, but this time it didn't feel awkward. It felt shared. Lunch passed like that, in quiet sentences, gentle pauses, and small moments of understanding. They didn't talk a lot, but they didn't need to. Sometimes two people connect not through words, but through quiet moments that feel safe. When the bell rang, Era stood up slowly. "Thank you for today," she said again. "You're welcome." Rian replied as Era walked out of the cafeteria. She felt something she hadn't felt in weeks. Not joy, not excitement, but hope, and as Rian watched her leave, he felt something too, something he hadn't felt since the day he lost his old friend. Maybe, just maybe, this time would be different. Their connection had started quietly, gently, on a day neither of them planned, but both of them needed. The next day, Era walked into school with a different feeling in her heart. It wasn't confidence, but it also wasn't fear. It was something in the middle, a quiet hope. She wasn't sure if she would meet Rian again, but part of her wished she would. Just knowing someone had noticed her made the world feel a little less cold. During the first few classes, she caught herself thinking about yesterday. The clean table, the soft smile, the calm voice. It felt unreal, almost like a dream someone gifted her during a difficult week. But it wasn't a dream. It happened. And the memory stayed warm. When lunch break finally came, Era held her tray with more confidence. She didn't walk slowly like before. She walked with small but steady steps. As she entered the cafeteria, her eyes automatically searched the corner where she had seen him yesterday, and he was there. Rian sat alone, just like before. But today, he wasn't looking down at his food. He was looking around, almost like he was waiting for something. Or someone. When his eyes found hers, he blinked once, surprised. Then he gave a small nod. The same calm gesture that made her feel safe yesterday. Era felt her heartbeat change rhythm, but she didn't stop. She walked toward him. Each step felt like she was moving into a new chapter. When she reached his table, she spoke softly. "Hi." Rian moved his tray slightly, making space for hers. "Hi." It was simple. But simple things, between lonely hearts, often mean more than big words. Era sat down. She didn't feel awkward this time. She felt settled, even if only a little. For a few seconds, neither of them spoke, but the silence felt peaceful. Then Rian asked, "How was your morning?" Era looked up, surprised he actually cared. "It was okay. A bit long. Long days happen," he said. "Sometimes for no reason." She nodded. "Yeah. Sometimes they do." A small smile formed on her lips, not because of something funny, but because his words felt real, honest, like he understood more than he said. Era gathered courage. "Do you always sit here?" "In this corner?" Rian looked around. "Usually. It's quieter. People don't come here much. Is that why you like it?" she asked. "Partly," he said. "And also, I don't like crowds." Yara felt a soft warmth. "Same. I don't like crowds either." He glanced at her, noticing the truth in her voice. "I know." She looked at him. "How?" He gave a tiny shrug. "You look for quiet places. I've seen you sit outside near the tree." Era's cheeks warmed with embarrassment. "You noticed?" "Not in a weird way," he said quickly. "I just understand what it feels like." Ira didn't feel uncomfortable. Instead, she felt understood again, the same way she felt yesterday. She relaxed a little and continued eating. After a moment, she asked, "Did you always sit alone? Even in your old school?" Rian paused. His eyes softened. "Not always. I had someone, but things changed." Era didn't ask for details. She sensed it wasn't a story told easily, so she said gently, "Sometimes people change. Sometimes we change." He nodded. "Yeah. And sometimes, starting again is the only option." Era looked down at her tray. "I guess I'm starting again too." For the first time, Rian's voice carried warmth. "You're doing better than you think." Her heart felt lighter. No one had said that to her in a long time. Then she said something she didn't plan to say. "I'm glad you talked to me yesterday." Rian looked at her. "I'm glad you came today." Their eyes met, calm, honest, and quietly connected. Lunch moved slowly after that. They talked about small things: teachers, homework, the noisy students, the strange posters in the hallway. None of it was special. But the way they talked, gently, sincerely, made every word feel meaningful. For the first time since Era moved to the new school, she didn't eat alone. And for the first time in a long time, Rian didn't feel like he had to. When the bell rang, they stood up at the same time. Era smiled softly. "See you tomorrow?" Rian nodded. "Yeah, tomorrow." Their first real conversation ended, not loudly, not dramatically, but quietly, like two lonely hearts finding a place where they finally belonged. Days passed quietly, and something gentle began to grow between Era and Rian. Not love. Not friendship in the usual way, but a soft understanding. They never forced conversations, never pretended to be someone else, never tried to impress. They simply shared space, shared silence, and shared small moments that felt warm in a world that often felt cold. Every lunch break, Era would walk toward the same corner, and Rian would always be there. Sometimes they talked about small things like school, books, or teachers. Sometimes they didn't talk at all, but even their silence felt kinder than most people's words. One day, however, things felt different. Era walked into the cafeteria, but Rian wasn't in his usual place. The seat was empty. The table was untouched. The whole corner looked strangely lonely again. Era's heart dropped for a moment. She tried to stay calm, but a small fear rose inside her. Had she done something wrong? Did he stop wanting to sit with her? Had he finally decided to sit alone again? She waited for a few minutes, pretending she wasn't waiting, but he still didn't come. Her hands tightened around her tray, and her throat felt dry. She suddenly realized how much his presence had become a part of her day. Then, just as she was about to sit alone again, she heard someone say, "Era." Shh. She turned. Rian stood behind her, holding a small bandage on his hand. His shirt sleeve was slightly torn and there was dust on his shoulder. She looked at him with worry. "What happened?" she asked quickly. "I slipped outside," he said calmly. "It's nothing." But Era could see it wasn't nothing. She noticed the way he held his arm, the way his breathing was slightly heavier. the way he tried to look normal even while he was hurting. Without thinking, she grabbed his wrist lightly. "Come sit," she said. Guiding him toward the table, Rian didn't resist. He followed her quietly, surprised by her sudden confidence. They sat down, and Era placed her tray to the side. Her food didn't matter now. Only his safety did. "Did you fall hard?" she asked. "A little," he admitted. Era looked at his bandaged hand. "You should rest." "You don't have to sit here today." Rian shook his head. "I wanted to sit here." Her heart stopped for a second. Those 6 simple words held more meaning than she expected. "Why?" she asked softly. He looked at the table, then at her. "Because this is the only place where I don't feel alone." Silence wrapped around them, not heavy, but emotional. Era felt something shift, something deep. For so long, she believed she was the only one struggling, the only one who felt invisible. But now she understood something important. Rian wasn't just being kind to her. He needed her too. Era's voice softened. "You're not alone, Rian. Not anymore." He looked into her eyes. There was no fear in his gaze, no hesitation, only honesty. "And you're not alone either." For the first time, Era felt something break inside her, the wall she had built around her heart. The fear she carried since her old school, the quiet voice that always whispered she didn't belong anywhere. That wall began to crack the moment Rian cleaned a table for her. Now it finally fell. They ate slowly. Era made him smile with small jokes. Rian made her laugh with his simple comments. Their bond wasn't loud, wasn't dramatic, but it was real. When lunch ended, Era stood up with him. "If you ever need help, or someone to talk to, I'm here," she said. Rian gave a gentle nod. "Same for you." They walked out of the cafeteria together, side by side, matching steps without planning to. 2 quiet souls, both hurt in different ways, had found something rare, a connection that made life a little softer. Sometimes life doesn't change with big events. Sometimes it changes with one simple act of kindness. And for Era and Rian, that act had created a new beginning.